Okay, hi. So I am going to attempt to bring you up to speed on things that you may have missed as we started our argument unit last week. I'm working in this slide deck. Um, I will post it during class so that you have it. I will go over this slide later. You don't need to know it yet. I want to make sure that you know that your homework for the very beginning of this unit, so you may or may not have completed this, it's in Google Classroom. It is called Homework Due 1215 Claims. So the idea is that you read on your own what the three types of claims are in an argument, and you practice that and you tell me what they are. That is worth 20 points. So you definitely are going to want to go back to do that. So the three types of claims fall to fact, value, and policy. The way that I remember fact is that, yes, there has to be some data. Somewhere there has to be something that exists. It can be a prediction. It can be a statement of cause or an effect, but it has to be based in data. I also like to think of it, as this slide says, something that has existed in the past, that exists presently, or will exist in the future, right? You can make a statement that this has always been here, but you have to be able to base that in data. That is a claim of fact. And so part of thinking through this that we did for homework, this was homework, so I don't want to talk about this right now. I want you to do it on your own. This Quizlet right here, it's included in your homework slides from 1215, is a great Quizlet to go back to understand claim of fact, value, and opinion. Excuse me. It's important to be able to identify the claims because you will be using these claims as a writer for the rest of your life, right? As a writer and a speaker. And you want to be able to seamlessly move from a claim of value to a claim of fact to a claim of opinion, all within one piece of writing or one piece of speaking. One email, it doesn't matter what you write or what you say, we use these. And the whole point is that you don't have to commit yourself to just one, right? You should be able to, as should any writer, be able to bounce between these in a written or spoken piece. And so one of the first assignments for this unit is this Padlet that we did last week. And this Padlet is also linked on Google Classroom from last week. You want to read a very brief article by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and then identify at least one claim of fact, value, and policy within the respective columns, and then include questions and feedback that you have. So you're working through all of these columns. This is 30 points, so you're going to want to jump on this. You will find it linked here, work due Monday. And this is also included with the podcast. And just a real quick shout out for this. Each week you want to do, moving forward, we'll do 3 per week. This past week, if you were missing the week of 12, 10, 12, 12, 12, right? If you were missing from that time forward, you want to be doing twice a week. So today's the 21st. If we're talking about last week that you missed, you want to have 2 podcasts or 2 articles, 2 films, 2 talks, whatever it is. You want to be able to collect information and have that information sit with you, right? You've learned something new, so you want to be able to utilize what you've learned in your own argument essay, as your own data, as your own evidence. You don't know what argument prompt you'll get on the exam, and you have nothing to work with but your own head, right? So the challenge is, what can you come up with, either from your general knowledge of the way the world works to very specific pieces of information that you remember from history class or science or math, or that you've learned in a podcast or that you've read in an article. So everything is up for grabs, but my goal is for you to get as much information that you could possibly use that that involve current events, that involve history. So you want to have things like the podcast each week to back up your bank of resources for the argument essay. So, like I said, this past week and the week prior, we did 2 per week. So when I'm looking, I should be seeing 4 total by 12/21, right? That's today. After break, we will begin with 3 per week. Each time you listen to a podcast or you read an article, you need to submit this. And you don't need to listen. There's some podcasts that are like an hour long. You don't need to listen to the whole thing. Listen to 10, 15 minutes. Get the main idea. Be able to summarize it. That's hugely important. Can you summarize this in 5 sentences? And that's really what I'm looking for, because that summary tells me that you have internalized and understood it. So here are the links to the podcast. And then if you were absent last week, you may have missed the time writing, and the timed writing is crucial. Everyone needs to have 1 in the grade books for 50 points. And so if you did not make that timed writing session in class, you want to attend a Wednesday timed writing session. I hold those from 11 to 1, open office hours. Jump on Zoom. I'll get you started right away. You'll be out in 41 minutes and you will have completed a timed writing essay. The more you do, the better you'll get. I mean, it's as simple as that. If you're an athlete, you understand what I'm talking about. The more you practice, the better you'll be on game day. And we got to start practicing often and early. These are the drills. So please show up to the timed writing sessions. They are extra credit. But if you miss the main timed writing essay, you will need to make that up on a Wednesday. So each time you do a timed writing essay, you want to complete this Google form, and I will make sure you have it. But that helps you to analyze and reflect on what you need to do differently for the next time you do the timed writing piece. Okay, let's jump back into our presentation. After we identified the 3 different types of claims, policy, value, and fact, I just went over a few premises that really we need to be aware of as we move through the unit. They sound very obvious, but they're also very important. We argue ideas, not things. So we need to make sure we have those universal ideas, right? Those abstract nouns all over our writing. And we want to have those, just like the rhetorical analysis essay, we want to have those front and center to make sure that it's idea-based. No one wants to read things, right? No one wants to read things. They want to read ideas. We don't care about your opinion, and that seems harsh, but nobody is going to sit and grade an exam essay where it's just your opinion alone. In fact, you will never use the pronoun I. You will never say I think or I believe. You will just come out and state your stance and your position, but your opinion alone isn't going to cut it, right? You definitely need to have some facts or evidence and or evidence behind it. Instead of opinions, we take positions, right? So we argue a position, we don't argue an opinion. And that becomes increasingly important as maybe we will get a prompt that we don't agree with, or it's just not within our bandwidth to like talk about, but whatever they give you, you'll have to go with, just like whatever a public defender defends in court, right? Or whatever a very high paying, wealthy attorney gets, right? You will defend whatever case you are thrown. Your position is backed, just like a claim, a position is backed by evidence and supported by reasoning, and that's how you're scored. And of course, going along with not your opinion, we will not use our head. We will use our head. We will not use our hearts. So we need to, again, shift from opinions to positions backed with evidence. And I will return to that throughout. Logic is huge. And when we did claim, evidence, reasoning, right, it was more straightforward. Now we're working with thesis, evidence, line of reasoning. So it becomes more nuanced. There's more parts to the reasoning. And really what you're doing is you're building logic. And that's exciting, but it is a challenge that you are ready to accept. So logic, the same as reasoning, is how we connect evidence to idea, and you're making inferences. And we're going to move on. I'm just going to let you read this as well so that it sinks in. But like I said before, you get a prompt and then you have to take a position, right? It's not your opinion, but you take a position and then you're going to develop lines of reasoning. This also comes last. We know it's a rigorous marathon of an exam, and this is your third essay. By now in the exam, you would have written 2 essays, you would have read 6 articles, and so now you have this, and this is the time when people just want to like give up. And I'm going to tell you, this is the one essay you guys already know. Like you pretty much have a super strong foundation for this essay. You've been working with the Debate League's format of claim evidence reasoning. Many of you have debated either in classroom or with the Debate League. So you understand how this works. My job with you is to make sure that you amp up your skills and you are primed to earn a 6. And so that's why it's important for you to go in knowing that what you have ahead of you, that this is at the end of a very long exam, but that this is where you get your points right here. What you need to know now is that we have a claim that is debatable, right? Just like a thesis or claim. And then the data, it can be called grounds, evidence, facts. I forgot what I was saying because I had to take that call, so I'm just going to move on. The whole point is that you have data and evidence. Claim and evidence, and whether or not you call that evidence, data, or grounds, it is the same thing. What is in red would be reasoning. So just to note to yourself, reasoning is more nuanced and deeper and goes in different directions to include examples and other positions, other points of view. And so that's what we call it, lines of reasoning. It's just a little bit more expansive than the traditional reasoning. So this is a really bad analogy, but I was trying to think of something to say how important evidence is when developing the argument. Of course, the reasoning is really what gives you like the heartbeat, right, of the essay, but the reasoning obviously cannot exist without the evidence, and so we need to start there. Evidence for this essay can come from, like I said, anything you remember in terms of facts or statistics, anything from a course that you've taken. It says here, your reading, your other history class, English class. It could even be from speeches that you've read in this class. We'll get back into that. Okay, so this is probably the most important piece of what I want to show you. The rest of the stuff was getting you caught up, but this is in your Google Classroom. It is due by Wednesday. There are 2 parts to it. Part 1 was due Monday, and part 1 is responding to last year's AP language argument essay prompt. And when I talked over the prompt, my main message to students was that you're going to get a lot of extra information in the prompt, and you can basically just cross it out or X it out in your mind and just start with the verb. And so the verb here is select, and then it's telling you what to select. Select a concept, a place, a role, etc., to which you believe that the term overrated should be applied. This is it. That's what you have to do. Everything after this is going to be the same in any prompt they give you. Write a well-developed essay in which you explain your judgment, use appropriate evidence. So here it is right here. Now, first, we have to know what the term overrated is. And even though I said cross all this stuff out, you don't need it, the only way it would be useful for you is if it helped you to understand what that concept or what that word is. The next thing you want to do is select a synonym for that word. So it could be a universal idea that or an abstract noun that matches that word if that word is already not abstract. I'm also going to choose like overratedness, I guess, or overvalued, or blown up, or so something in your mind that you can have to work with if you're not used to seeing what this term is as it's written. The reason why I said to cross everything out before the command verb, right? You eyeball the command verb because it's extra info and you aren't expected to talk about it again. They're not going to expect to see it anywhere in your essay. Again, it's just to kind of give you more information. I think it's overwhelming. I think in my head, I would just start with the command verb and then work backwards if I didn't understand what was being asked of me, but remember that this is timed. So the next thing you have to do is to come up with a thesis, and that would be what is the thing you are selecting? That's your thesis. So I started this essay for you, which whether that's easier or harder, it is what it is. So I came up with a thesis that social media is overrated. And then I came up with the first example, okay? The homework due today, the 21st, is that you would have to come up with the second and the third examples for why social media is overrated. So again, let me just restate. Here's the prompt. I came up with the thesis and I started the essay. So my thesis is social media is overrated. And then I came up with the first example of how social media is overrated. I chose SoundCloud, right? That's the what. And the why is that SoundCloud gives a false sense of popularity. Okay? So every time you come up with an example, yes, you need the specific example like social media, that's specific. I mean, like SoundCloud, that is a specific example of social media and that social media is overrated. But you also would need the because, the what and the why. Okay. So we talked a lot about on Friday, we talked a lot about the challenges of, how this is called generative thinking. So you generate ideas, and that's part of the work that I'll do with you in this unit is to give you something that you immediately have to like start thinking of stuff for. And so we got to get your brain going in that direction if it isn't already. We talked about different ways you could take this. Here's some of the notes that I took during class. Right? So someone said Facebook, and I said, okay, so why Facebook, right? So if I said SoundCloud, and I said SoundCloud gives you a false sense of popularity, Facebook is the what. Now, what's the why, right? So you have to have both of those things together to make evidence for an example. So here it is, just so you remember what I'm saying. Each piece of evidence needs a what and a why, okay? So your goal for the first part is to come up with two additional pieces of evidence to prove that social media is overrated. So I'll go through with you what I worked out. This is what I call the thinking map. And so my first step is to think, am I taking a positive or a negative stance on the topic? If the topic is overrated, and then I choose the thesis to be social media is overrated, what will my descriptions be? What will all my adverbs be? My perspectives be on social media, on my specific example one, which is SoundCloud? I have to have that stance firm in my mind so that I don't waver, right? Because one of the number one reasons that students don't earn top scores on this is because their reasoning is there's like holes in their reasoning, and that usually happens when students contradict themselves or they're not clear with their position. And so an easy way for me to remember is, am I taking a negative or positive stance? This will be mostly determined by the topic, by the prompt, right? So they give you the word overrated. Overrated is more of a negative word than a positive. So all of my adverbs and descriptions about my evidence and about my thesis will be negative. Okay, so that comes from the prompt language, the topic and the prompt. So overrated is the topic of the prompt. They gave me overrated. I am proving that social media is overrated. That is my thesis. Let me just make a note so that when you go back, this makes even clearer sense. And then SoundCloud is the first example of how I'm proving my thesis. I am building a line of reasoning that is negative towards both the thesis and the example, social media and SoundCloud. So this is like the thought process that I want you to think through when you're developing evidence 2 and 3. You are also working with the thesis of social media, so you would have to come up with a second piece of evidence, right? People are saying, okay, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, that's great. Just make sure you add AWHY, right? If I say SoundCloud, I said SoundCloud because it gives a false sense of popularity. If I say then my second one is Facebook because it blah, blah, blah. My third one is Instagram because it blah, blah, blah. Okay, always negative in stance. So here's just another basic map of what you're doing. Okay, very important for you to go back to Google Classroom at the point at which you're ready to do this assignment, because after class on Friday, I did some of my own brainstorming and thought of another way you could think through this process of coming up with evidence. And this might work for you to think through this. These are all frames about how to talk about our evidence and to test it and to build logic around it. So if you'd like to work on this, this is another way that you can see that. Please see Google Classroom. I have a hard time talking after a long day, so forgive me. As a class, and I would definitely take a moment to take a look at this URL. It's bit.ly AP board 2, and it will take you to what we call an idea boards. And this is evidence 1 and evidence 2 that people shared in class from their homework, right? They have the what, they have the why for each of these. So if you can add yours to this after you do your homework, that would be great. And that way we can keep track of all these wonderful ideas. And I love reading what people think of, because I never in a million years would have thought of this great evidence. And that's why you guys are going to do awesome at this essay. So for work this week, the week of 12/21, you are still working with the same prompt, overrated, okay? And at the very second part, towards the bottom, you have part 2, and this is after the chart that you did for homework, where you finished my essay, you finished what we started. You are now coming up with your own thesis to the same prompt. So the task is still think of a concept, a place, or a role that you feel is overrated. Okay, so in your head, think overratedness, overvalued, excessiveness, right? You get to come up with a thesis this time. So you choose what is overrated. And that's your thesis. Just like I chose social media as my thesis up here, right? You're going to choose your thesis. Cannot be social media. It could be anything else. And then you're going to come up with 3 examples, and then always think it's the what and it's the why. It's the what and why together. So if you say that someone was saying that Christmas is overrated, my my pushback is always make sure it's not too specific, that it's not going to let you develop 3 different ways it's overrated, 3 different examples, and then within those examples come up, or 3 different pieces of evidence, and then within those pieces of evidence you would have to still come up with examples or backing, right? You still need to find ways to back your evidence. So please make sure that it's not so specific that it's going to be too limiting for you. So someone else was saying school, education, or school for schooling. College is a famous one. Some people love is overrated. You can have fun with it, but you just have to come up with 3 pieces of evidence. Each piece of evidence needs a what and a why. So like I said, for the one that we did for the weekend, if it was social media, my what was SoundCloud, my why began with a because, right? And so you're doing the whole chart based on your thesis for overrated. So I tried to do, I really want to do 5 minutes, and I know this is 26, 27 minutes, but this was about a week of me teaching. So I did pretty good for 27 minutes. So please contact me if you need any assistance. This is new. It is confusing. It is different. Please do not give up. You are not alone. Reach out to me, text me. But I cannot read your mind. So please communicate with me directly. And I am here 100, what's the most, like 199%, 200%, 300% of the time. Now I'm going to stop because it's time for me to end my workday.